Have you ever noticed the cats scattered throughout Kingdom Come Deliverance 2's map? If you try to walk up to these cats, there's a very high probability that they'll just flee, and boy do they move fast. But if you do manage to get close enough to them, this is what you'll see. Have you ever seen a goofier looking cat? Kingdom Come Deliverance 2's whole thing is realism. Photogrammetry and 3D scanning of modern Czechia to reconstruct 15th century Bohemia's landscape. And that realism extends to basically every part of this game world. You get hungry, you get dirty, your clothes collect mud. The whole aesthetic of the game is this incredibly grounded historical simulation. So what the fuck are these? This cat's face looks odd, right? It's flat, it's slightly human, and your first instinct is probably, okay, even Warhorse can't get everything right. But I've done some digging, and I want you to check out this painting. Goofy cat. If you look at any medieval art, you'll find that the cats are an absolute gong show. Why is this? Well, it turns out cats were actually relatively rare in Central Europe before a big population boom in the late 13th century. So there's a few possible explanations. Theory number one, cats were heavily associated with witchcraft and devilish behavior, so their distorted, ugly appearance was intentional to show how morally suspect they were. And theory number two, the cats were actually well loved, but because there were so few of them, they were mostly drawn from memory in extremely poor light on tiny pieces of vellum, these scrolls, elder scrolls you might say. What you end up with is this kind of broken telephone situation where each cat looks a little bit dumber than the last. Which brings us to our buddy here. I don't think this cat was a design flaw. I think Warhorse modeled this deliberately as a kind of 4D chess nod to medieval cat art. It's like a reference of a reference. This model sits perfectly in a long, proud tradition of Bohemian cats looking subtly, inexplicably wrong. And I just love that the developers did this, and it got me wondering, what else did they do? So I've walked the roughly 50 square kilometer map, and today we're going to look at 8 more tiny details in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 you weren't meant to notice. Some of them are brilliant little pieces of medieval engineering, another one explains why an entire city empties itself out every night, and one of them is maybe the most mind-blowing thing I've ever seen in a video game. We'll get there, but we're going to start all the way up north at Trotsky Castle, and the very first thing I want to show you is the green mystery box. I'm standing in the Chamberlain's quarters and I want you to look at this thing behind me. Do we have any guesses as to what this is? It looks like some big cube from a sci-fi movie or something. I'll tell you what I thought it was when I first saw it. So this room belongs to Chamberlain Ulrich von Schomburg. And if you've played Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, you'll know that throughout the game, it's heavily hinted that Ulrich has some sort of weird fetish, and that the hired women are all so creeped out by him that they won't go back to his room regardless of how much he pays. So when I initially walked in here, my thought was, oh my god, this is it. This is some sort of fucked up medieval fetish torture device. But there's no other indication of how it works. No buttons, no levers, nothing. But check this out. If we walk out of his bedroom and into the little adjoining room connecting to it, a little firebox opening. It's a stove. Or more accurately, and I hope I pronounced this correctly, a kakelophen. And these were one of the most significant domestic technologies of medieval Central Europe. And the fact that this is in a Chamberlain's quarters completely tracks, because this shit was not cheap. They required skilled craftsmen, custom ceramic tiles, and serious masonry expertise. So these would be strictly reserved for the wealthy. And the reason the wood intake is in a completely separate room is so a servant could be responsible for feeding the fire throughout the night without actually having to walk into a Chamberlain's bedroom and disturb him. It is an incredibly cool detail for the developers to add. And when I saw it, I assumed, okay, awesome. If I look in other wealthy residents' quarters, this green box is the stove I'm going to find. How wrong I was. Because if you look around, you'll find completely different variations of these stoves. But Warhorse didn't stop there. Because as we step down the societal wealth ladder, the architecture changes with it. If you go to the upper middle class homes, you still find these stoves, but the wood intakes are right there in the living space. They don't have servants, so they feed the fire themselves. And then you go to the smaller villages or the less wealthy houses and you find these. If you walk into almost any ordinary house or tavern in KCD2 and look up above the cooking fire, you're going to see one of these massive funnel-looking structures that often go right through the middle floors of houses. And this is actually one of the most accurate historical flexes in the entire game. These structures are historically known as smoke hoods, and they are the defining feature of what is called a black kitchen. Instead of just building a fire in the middle of the room and breathing the smoke like a caveman, they built these giant wooden canopies against the wall to catch the fumes. The walls underneath would get completely caked in soot, hence the black kitchen. The fact that the developers let us just walk inside these houses and see the exact historical framing of a 15th century smoke hood is insane to me. And just to really drive the point home, if you go to the absolute poorest hovels in the game, they don't even have the smoke hoods. They literally just have a fire in the room. And if you look closely at the upper windows of those specific houses, Warhorse actually added black soot textures to show the evidence of the smoke escaping out the windows. In my Red Dead Redemption 2 Tiny Details video, I said that Rockstar probably held the record for the most unique stoves ever modeled in a video game. I'm here today to formally retract that statement. Warhorse Studios built an entire functional socio-economic hierarchy out of 15th century HVAC systems. You can literally see the class divide just by looking at what's heating the houses. Oh, and the chimneys outside? All completely unique models because why wouldn't they be? Nobody would have complained if they didn't do this. We probably wouldn't have even noticed, but they did it anyway, and I could kiss them. But not all of these details are hidden away in bedrooms and kitchens. Some of them you've walked past 100 times. The next stop on this little walking tour is the Dovecote. Scattered across the settlements of KCD2, standing tall on a single pole are these structures. Now most players, myself included, are going to glance at this and say, oh, it's a birdhouse. Well, who cares? And keep walking. But as I spent more time looking around these villages, one thing became abundantly clear. Almost everything in this game is functional. These people build infrastructure to survive. There are no live, love, laugh signs hanging above the dung piles. So why would they waste prime real estate in the middle of their settlement to build giant decorative pigeon towers? They wouldn't. So back to the history books I went. And as it turns out, this wasn't built with the pigeon's wellness in mind. This is called a Dovecote, and the real reason it's here is because of the shit. Pigeon dung was so valuable for making explosives that these towers were actually guarded specifically to prevent people from stealing the poop. And to prove they know this, Warhorse actually modeled the droppings right around the base of these dovecotes, baking that entire historical supply chain into the environment without us ever noticing. Okay, so we're gonna get out of the mud and the pigeon dung for a second and head into the big city of Kuttenberg. Stop number 4 is the Painted City. Now there's a running theme in video games, or really just how we think about the Middle Ages in general, right? We kind of just assume that everything was this depressing monochrome ocean of gray stone and brown dirt. Because that's what's left now in the real world. Centuries of weather and industrial smog basically washed all the original paint away. So we just stare at the bare stone skeletons of these old buildings today and assume, yeah, they're just like living in a bleak, colorless nightmare. But if you actually walk around Kuttenberg in KCD2, you start noticing these buildings. Painted window frames, geometric borders, huge murals just slapped onto the side of buildings. It almost feels like a mistake, like it's too colorful, you know? But it's not. It's actually just a massive public flex. The people in Kuttenberg were absolutely loaded from their silver mining industry, so prominent merchants would plaster their homes with paint to show everyone exactly how rich they were. But there's one specific painted facade in this city that I want to show you because I think it's amazing. If you walk up to one of the city gate towers and you use the free cam to kind of get up in there and look closely, you see this. It's a crowned figure surrounded by all these heraldic shields holding a tiny stone tower. Now in medieval Catholic iconography, if you see a figure holding a tower, that has one primary identity, Saint Barbara. She is the patron saint of miners. In fact, the real-world miners of Kuttenberg were the ones who actually funded and built the massive cathedral of St. Barbara to honor her. And Warhorse even put a little nod to this on the in-game map, where she's holding a miniature of the actual cathedral instead of just a generic tower, which is a cool little detail, but it gets better. Because Warhorse put so much reverence into recreating this city, this cathedral, and this specific patron saint, that something genuinely incredible happened in the real world. On December 24th, 2024, which is St. Barbara's Day, the actual real-world cathedral of St. Barbara in Kuttenberg hosted a ceremonial mass. And for their liturgical dance performance, they played the St. Barbara theme from the Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 soundtrack. I'm not kidding. The real cathedral built by the real miners of the real city celebrated their patron saint using music from a video game set in their town 600 years ago. That is a video game fundamentally bleeding into and becoming a part of a 600-year-old civic history. We talk a lot about how media is used to reflect history, but it's so rare to see a piece of media actually get absorbed into the history it's portraying. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. In a second, I'm going to tell you why Kuttenberg's NPCs all leave the city every single night. And then after that, I'm going to show you my favorite detail in the entire game. But first, we're going to have a very quick word from today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is Factor. Do you know what's tough? You buy a bag of fresh vegetables ready to turn your whole life around, and 3 days later, it's just a brown liquid pooling in the bottom of your fridge. Thankfully, Factor delivers chef-crafted, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals straight to your door. So you can eat well this summer without spending all your time in the kitchen. No planning, no prep, and zero cleanup. Eating well becomes kinda easy. They have these newly launched salads, plus globally inspired dishes like the honey sambal barramundi. Expand your horizons, people. Fun fact, I'm actually allergic to honey. I actually eat these. Not the honey ones, they'd kill me, but these other ones. It fits perfectly into my summer routine because I want to live my life, damn it, not cook for 3 hours a day. It's a nightmare. A non-stop nightmare. I also load up on their peanut butter energy bites from their add-on menu, which are incredible. I use Factor and you should too, if you want. You gotta make your own choices. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use the code BandicootFB50 to get 50% off your first Factor box plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code BandicootFB50 at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Let's talk about the Kuttenberg nighttime exodus. A few weeks ago, I made a video where I followed NPCs around the village of Mishkowitz for 9 straight days. And what I found was that those NPCs have fully fleshed out simulated lives. They wake up, they do their jobs, they eat, they socialize, they go to bed. It was completely mind-blowing. Naturally, a lot of people in the comments asked me to do the exact same thing in the massive city of Kuttenberg. So I went to Kuttenberg, I picked a few people, and I started following them. And what I found was not the same as small town Mishkowitz. During the day, Kuttenberg is as bustling as any other village in the game. People have routines. But when the sun goes down, something kind of bizarre happens. A huge chunk of the population doesn't go home. Instead, they just start walking towards the gates. They leave the town entirely and they just disappear into the void. Look at how strange this is. Now I want to talk to you about the difference between real life and video games for a second. In real life, if you see something strange, like for instance driving down the highway and seeing a single perfectly good sneaker sitting on the side of the road, you can't just pull out your phone and call God. What's the lore behind the highway shoe?
We're sorry.
But in a video game, if you're a YouTuber, you absolutely can call God. And in this case, God's name is Peter. Peter is the senior AI developer at Warhorse Studios, and I emailed him to ask what was happening with the nightly exodus, and here's what he had to say. Towards the end of development, Warhorse had a technological breakthrough. Suddenly, the engine was able to support way more NPCs in the city than they originally expected, which is great, right? A more populated city. But they had a problem. They didn't have enough time to actually build and furnish interiors for all these new people. So about a quarter of Kuttenberg's population was assigned to inaccessible houses. If the sun goes down and you, the player, are far away, these NPCs will just teleport through locked doors into their fake houses. But if you're standing close to them, the game knows that watching a medieval baker phase through a solid oak door would ruin your immersion. So instead of teleporting, the NPC's AI just pivots and keeps walking until they leave the city entirely. That's like Truman Show level shit. The actors won't break character if you, Truman, are watching, but as soon as you look away, they'll break character and just do stuff that only code could do. Peter called it a necessary evil. I call it an absolute masterpiece of problem solving. Straight from God's mouth. Okay, we've reached stop number 7, and I think this is my favorite detail I found in any of these videos I've made. The path. Let's just look at this path for a second. Now obviously the intended route here is to walk down this path, make a nice sharp 90-degree left turn, and walk up the wooden stairs, right? But look right next to it. Right beside the staircase, worn directly into the grass on a slant, is a rough dirt track. Some 15th century peasant looked at those stairs and said, fuck that, I'm not walking the extra 3 steps, and just trudged up the embankment. Stay with me here. Check out this farm near Samin. If you follow the main road, you come up this path, you turn, and then you cross into the farm. But look at the ground down here. If you start at the bottom, there's a faint line of footsteps cutting directly across the grass, bypassing the corner entirely. And look, it's not on the map at all. Warhorse's environment artist just manually painted a diagonal dirt track to represent people cutting the corner. But there's more. It's not just the people walking. Look at this cart path taking a turn. You can clearly see deep wheel tracks on the left side here, but absolutely no wheel marks on the right side. Why? Because the ground on the right is covered in rocks, meaning the heavy wooden wheels wouldn't leave an indentation. And right in the middle of the track, there's a perfect strip of grass growing exactly where the elevated underbelly of the cart would pass over without touching the dirt. And you might be watching this and thinking, okay, you've completely lost your mind. Just a pile of dirt. Who cares? Why is this interesting? It's interesting because it makes this video game feel incredibly, overwhelmingly human. What we are looking at here is the physical, geographical manifestation of human laziness. In urban planning, this is called a desire path, an unofficial route worn into the ground by people or animals taking the easiest path between 2 points. And you probably see these all the time in the real world. You probably use them all the time without even noticing it. So what this means is Warhorse modeled the psychology of the people deciding not to use the environment correctly. They modeled the fact that we will always, when given the opportunity, take the shortcut. How do you even think to do that? And spots that would logically have less foot traffic actually have less worn desire paths. Jesus Christ be praised, I love it. Okay, well I've taken up too much of your time here, but I have one last tiny detail to show you. And in fact, I don't even know what that detail is because it's from Warhorse Studios. When I emailed Warhorse asking about the Kuttenberg NPC mystery, I asked them one more question. What is one detail in this game that you think is very cool that people don't talk about that I can share in my video? I genuinely haven't opened this reply yet. Okay, let's see here. Thank you for your interest. We love the NPC video. Oh, cheers, Tobias. Very nice of you. Well, the full game is about details like you mentioned. I mean, it's probably the little things that make KCD unique. but since you asked, the cats. They were never meant to be in the game. It was a rogue stealth team that secretly put them in the game without production realizing until it was too late. Wait, what? A rogue stealth team? What the f*** is going on at Warhorse Studios?